All right, what's cracking? Space Junky. All right, so we're gonna do this. uh, okay, so just got back from the trip. I've been out of town. Went to a little town called Salt Lake City. Uh, just got back. Some crazy shit went down. This and that, and we had a little situation. Uh, and then okay, so before that, a my old bosses, some ex-employers, I guess they ended up getting busted. 40 uh, agents came in and from the FBI and fucking popped them, and it made the news and all this shit. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, are you kidding me? So yeah, I'm not gonna go into it, but yeah, dude. I guess they had like 40 fucking agents hit the place and shut them down. It was like all this stuff, and next thing you know, there's like all these fucking mugshots and shit, and people are fucking, you know, uh, in a situation. So, anyways, it's been an interesting week, I would say. As far as interesting goes, Chinese water torture could be interesting, to the right person. Um, so, long story short, moving on. I'm having a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale because, like, why not? And chilling. All right, so I got a meeting in the morning. Got a few things to take care of, and I'm gonna get back to work. So space is my job. Um, some people they live their whole life and they never know what they were supposed to do with their lives. With their lives, how they were gonna, fulfill their destiny or make a change or maybe affect others or maybe, you know, uh, leave a legacy, make some kind of a mark, create some kind of an item or you know, uh, a group of people, some kind of something. What do you want to do with your life? And for me, I've done a lot of things. Okay, I was involved in several different styles of business. Um, I managed restaurants. I managed call centers. I had over 80 employees under me on a daily basis. I wore a suit and tie to, I was a suit. You know what I mean? Uh, I did. I became a structural iron worker. I went through a 4-year apprenticeship program and became a journeyman. So now I can, travel all over the world and ply my trade, and several other things. I was in mortgages. I was, very outstanding. Actually, like top 1% of people in the United States performance standards. Like I've seen a lot of different things. Um, Business to business sales, talking people into stuff, whatever, and nothing has been so. This is bad. I have to turn the air off for me to get a good recording. But nothing has been so interesting as space. So I've kind of carried on here, but basically for me, what gets my goat or what tickles my fancy or ruffles my feathers is space travel. I think it's an outstanding thing that we can do as people. Um, Even if we're not actually flying to space, that we're sending robots, sending probes, whatever the case may be, or inspiring others. I feel that space is really something, man. So, cheers, space. So, I'm doing what I do a lot of times. So I'm watching YouTube, SNL videos, and Joe Rogan's podcast. And so tonight I was watching, once again I was watching Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson, and it's quite inspiring. Um, I like to see how different people think, and especially inspiring people that have gone to some length that were above the normal capacity of humans. I've been through so much. I broke a windshield with my face. I've been beat up by almost everybody except for Asians. I mean, uh, I've been shot at. I've been stabbed. I had people try to run me over in cars. I went and drove off into a canal into, under the car was like under the water and we had to like escape from the car. Um, I One day I jumped out of the way of two moving vehicles within 5 minutes. And the second one, I had to like jump back like the Matrix in the car. Two cars crashed into each other, like not less than like about 3 or 5 minutes from the last time I had to like jump out of the way of a car. We were still talking about it, and these two cars were both trying to catch the red light, and they smacked, and this green car like came through right where I was walking, and I jumped back and literally was like, so life literally passed before my eyes, like I was definitely been hit at 35 miles an hour by a car. Like you pretty off the on ramp where we were on an elevated level of a freeway where even if they hit me and I flew, then I would like fly off the freeway down like to some overpass, like bad, real fucking bad. Okay. So I've been in a lot of deep shit scenarios. Okay. Shit hits the fan. Like I've been there, man. I've fucking been there. Like to a pretty good extent to where I can say like I've been through probably much more than the regular person. I've had out of body experience. I was sitting on the operating table. I was floating above my body in the operating table, watching the surgeons. I have a surgery. All my stomach muscles were cut. I have a full lobotomy, so I had like a C-section when I got stabbed. So they took all my guts and worked on my back from the inside out and sewed my back up and then put me back together, stitched me back like a teddy bear. So I floated out of my body. I've done drugs and all kinds of stuff. And I'll tell you, life is a trip. Okay. And uh, so I look at things maybe differently than other people. I'm kind of one of those people where everything is a surprise, but nothing's really a surprise. It seems like we've kind of done this before, like this life kind of plays out. And as long as you keep on like refusing to see that life is playing out in front of you and that you're some of this selfish person that's holding inside yourself and thinking it's me and it's me and things are going to revolve around me when you realize you're not that important, or maybe you're important but that your ego or this part of you that's like, hey, I want to talk about this, like that's not important. It starts to kind of strip you away, you know um sitting in the ICU, for example, cut in half, okay, not knowing if you're going to die, tubes down under, in your arms, in your legs, tubes going down your throat to where you can't swallow and you can't drink any water. And your mom's like, if you die, it's okay. Like, you know, I've kind of been through the ringer. And so I've seen some things that maybe, some people might not have a grasp or an experience. And so, life is a real rich experience for me. You know what I mean? It's been a trip. When I was a kid, somebody told me once, Life is a trip, and then you die. So that was 1986. So yeah, I thought that sounds kind of right. When I was 6 years old, I thought that, life is a trip and then you die. Like that statement that somebody told me, this adult, um, told me, and I was like, you know what? Like, I think he's right. So I kind of got that, at least in a little sense of the word, in 1986. I kind of understood that. So being over the hill, being 40 is great. Um, I only say that because it's like, what else am I gonna say? I mean, um, no, but really, it's kind of strange because your life kind of comes together, and life doesn't really wait for you. Your perception of the events, it keeps coming. You know, uh, life keeps coming at you, but your perception of the events is at a certain time scale, and you can only get what you're supposed to get. You can only perceive it and react to it at a certain speed, and so I'm saying that the more that you get into reality, which is that you don't know who you are, you don't know, that's something, Mike Tyson was saying, you don't know who you are. If you know who you were, blah, 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 something else would be. So I think that we really don't know, who we are, and that maybe that's a good thing. Um, and yet, you know, if you don't embrace that you do know who you are, what I mean to say is like there's certain things about you, and I don't mean like trying to remember like these best times in your life or the worst times in your life. I'm kind of an extremist when it comes to trying to think about how can I capitalize on this? How can I make this uh, add this synchronicity to my life? How can this become more substantial part of me and I can breathe it in, take it into me, make the truth my own. You know what I mean? If you're doing it right, you breathe in life, you devour it, you chew it up and you taste it and you feel it and you sense it. And if you're not doing that, if you're not living life to the fullest, and I don't mean pushing people out of your way or telling people or being aggressive or whatever, what I mean to say is that living life to the fullest means that you're doing what you want to do. And it's best suited when you keep other people in mind. When you really think about other people, then you start to see where your place in the stream of time is. Time is like this river, you know, and you can't push the river. That's a phrase somebody made up one time. You can't push the river. It's like even if you wanted to, if you got on a boat and you sat it on the river, it's made out of paper or whatever, and it's floating down the river. Even and when you're on that boat and you're in life, you know what I mean. You're floating down that river. You can't push the river. I really got to set up my tripod. I got a couple of them, but you can't push the river. You can't make the life stream that's coming into you go faster. You can't get past certain moments in your life faster than what your perception of time is. So you can't push the river. Okay, so part of it is that you're a prisoner in your body. If you're 60, 80, 90 years old and you're feeling your age and everything is catching up to you, um, you still can't. You don't have control. You're still a prisoner in your body. You're still a prisoner of your experience. There's nothing really that you can do to hasten what's outside of your control. So at a certain point, it's not about complacency or about relaxing or about laying down or giving up or anything like that, but a certain submission, you know. Um, Submission is one of those things where at a certain point, it's the right thing to do. So we dig deep. when we submit, uh, when we uh, when we realize that things are outside of our control, or that they're not within us, that they're without us, that there's something grander, there's some kind of plan, there's some kind of something. Not to get too metaphysical, but there's a lot that we don't control. There's a lot of things that we don't know and that we will not know. So I think part of it, as far as things go, is really embracing the suck. In the words of a Marine, embracing the suck. Like basically, when times suck, when things are going wrong, when things ain't right, that's your description. It sucks, but this is a building time. You know, um, simply said, let's say if you were, training, or in some physical activity, you go through and you sweat, you get the endorphin release, you get this and that. Those things aren't really the suck. The suck is the fucking hardest times. And these are the times that make us the toughest. We went through shit, and we got to get over it, or we can't. I can't. I can't. I can't. It's not what the loser says. It's what the uninspired or the untrained mind will tell you. You can't listen to that. If you get in the military, and I'm not saying that you would, but I'm saying that if you were in the military, people will tell you, there's certain things you got to get over, but embrace the suck. It sucks. This is shit. We're crawling through the fucking mud. We're getting shot at. People are beating us up. I'm getting a taste of humility. I'm getting this or that. These little vibes that you feel with every fiber in your frame that are undeniable and that you can't release yourself from, and that you don't have control. One of the things is I'm kind of a control freak. That's not really the case. I would just say that I understand that it feels that if things are in my control, then I feel better about it in hindsight, in some kind of post retroactive way. I can kind of see from before where I'm going to be at. Then later on, I'll be better. But seeing that when you're in that suck factor is not always an easy thing. And I think that it's outside of my control. I don't know, how your mind works, but basically, I found that that kind of submission to what you're going through, this realization that you have to realize that it is not necessarily going to be okay. This could be the last day of your life, the last night, the last few breaths. And, some things are exciting and they're very dangerous. You get in a car wreck. I've been shot at, having bullets zip past my head. When you hear, and you're like, oh shit, it's time to run. They're shooting at me. You see a little, starburst. They say the so-called baptism of fire. When bullets zip past your head, you don't have time to think really. Maybe you do. Maybe you're the different kind of person to be like, oh, I wonder what would feel like if, no, dude, I ran and told the girl that was with me, let's run, But anyways, I'm not going to get into that. Um, but a lot of life is, I think, submission. It's not really submitting, but it's realizing the eventualities of what was going on right then. And then later on, maybe that you'll process this information and that you'll come to some kind of an understanding or not. But that's not the point. You're not the most important person in the world. I'm not. No one is. No one's the most important person. There's all these things going on, all this life going on, and that there's other things that have to work out for whatever plan to come about, and that you're just one part of it. Now, not necessarily within that, but besides that, maybe that there is so much that's in your control that you are an outstanding person, and that even if you haven't realized that at this point in your life, that maybe that you'll come to this kind of an understanding. Doesn't matter what race or sex or orientation or whatever the case may be, your physical development, your mental acuity, your emotional health, okay? We are bigger inside, inside here, inside of our hearts, inside of our spirit, the people that we touch in our lives. We're bigger than what we know. We are tougher than we think. When you say, I can't do that. I don't understand. I can't do that. Eat a cricket. What do you mean? Snap this little bunny's neck or something? I can't do that. I can't do that. I can't do that. That's just a little voice of reason telling you that I don't know because I haven't been experienced enough to know that reasonably I can't do this. So we're unintelligent, in other words, sometimes. So sometimes when you hear yourself telling yourself, I'm not talking about ethics, I can't do this because it's unethical. I understand that. It's not that. What I mean to say is when it's tough and you're experiencing the suck factor or how bad things feel, even if it doesn't feel like it right then, there's a lesson in things. Maybe not everything, but in many things, and that it's deeper, but that it's not necessarily time for you to even be realizing something or for you to get something out of it. It's not all about you. It's not all about you. Being selfish feels great sometimes. Okay? Maybe that's a lie, maybe that's a colored or flavored statement, but you aren't everything. And so part of that embracing the suck or understanding your place in the grand scheme of things, that you can't push the river. You can't make your experience go faster, and you can't necessarily find meaning in it either. Okay? Because it might not necessarily be for you to find this meaning, to embrace this essence of what's going on. So I'm kind of going around in circles a little bit. I'm sorry. I had a couple beers. Um, but I kind of came full circle in my own mind um, about 15 years ago. I felt like I went through so much that I kind of got back to this almost like a cleanliness or this certain grain of wholesomeness. And it was like I felt like for a moment, almost like I was Bruce Lee, like I was living this true present, this moment in time. And that moment made me feel like I was alive and that yet I didn't know much about life. And so I reflect on many things, but I kind of feel like there's almost like a not maybe not a shadow of that, but a kind of similar feeling that I came back full circle around again, and that I realized at one point pretty recently, but because it's more of an abstract understanding it feels like an understanding maybe more than it is than an intellectual moment of recognition. So it's almost like if you had a reoccurring dream and you couldn't quite put your finger on it like exactly what it was, but there was this sense of the feeling. That's kind of the feeling that I was on the edges of it, on the edges of it. But what I was on the edges of, what I mean to say, kind of gone off. It's just difficult to put into words, but that submission, not to another person, not to another a scenario or a specific thing that has occurred, but that many things, and that many things that weren't cut and dry, that many things that weren't resolved, these unresolved issues, these burning questions, these anxieties of life, that there was a certain sense of, wait a second, I kind of feel like there's something there to this kind of message of maybe it's not submission, but it's more of you don't have to fight. It's not I mean, to say a typical battle, it's more just about growing up. You just mature. But yet, it's not that you have to be ready for it. It's just that whenever it does come, you can recognize that you don't have the power or the control over it, and that you're going through something, and that sometimes, no matter how bad it sucks, if you make it out on the other side, then maybe you'll be a more resilient person. Maybe you'll be more well-rounded, that you'll have a larger scope in life, and maybe not. Maybe it's one of those little pieces that you just don't ever really quite fit. Maybe you're 80 or on your deathbed or something, and then it makes sense. I don't know. But it seems like at a certain point, I feel like I went full circle, and I realized that my place in my life was absolute, that I could do things, and that I needed to live like right now. This is just before I had a kid, and I felt like I realized that what I could do was more than what I knew. Like I got smart to the fact that I wasn't that smart, but that there was more possibility. And then this second realization, this second wave of coming full circle, I sort of realized, but the other one was more of like this kind of epiphany or this kind of moment where I was sitting in my apartment and I was like, I've come full circle. I wrote a poem about it, a musical piece. But this second time, it was more abstract and it was along the edges, and I couldn't quite be sure if this is a real thing or not, but a certain sense of understanding that things are beyond my control that kind of came to me. And so I think that there's probably other people that can relate to it. I know I've been kind of rambling on. This is a long time to talk about something without really saying something. It's not one of them Seinfeld moments where I contrived this. I literally turned the camera on, didn't know what I was going to talk about. I'd talk about, and so now we're here. So 27 minutes and 23 seconds later, peace, Space Junky.